Keith, thanks for joining us. We're gonna let you introduce yourself, and you can feel free to share as much about yourself as you want to.
Okay.
We're here to get to know you, so we'll let
Okay.
you get started and go from there.
All right. So, Keith Hopkins. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. I started running track in sixth grade. My elementary school had a track team, and I only actually ran track because it was the only sport that I could get out of the house that my grandparents who raised me would allow me to do. Because they didn't want me to play football because I get hurt. They didn't want me playing basketball because you get hustled, you get in a fight. But track was the only one that seemed like it was safe. So I was able to do that. I actually hated track the first couple of years I did it. I forgot my uniform my first meet. That was pretty funny. I had to run in my uniform pants with no belt. So that was really hard. But in high school, I kind of did the same thing. I just wanted to get out of the house. And it turns out I picked the right sport. Like our team was really, really good. We won 4 state titles while I was in high school. I was a part of 3 of those. And I was a hurdler and a high jumper in high school. And then I just kind of put together my own path after that. I got to go to Purdue, compete there. I was, they don't call it what they used to call it now, but it used to be like second team All American or runner up. I got to do that a couple of times indoor and outdoor. And then after I graduated, I jumped right into coaching. So I went back to my high school to coach. I was sprints and hurdles coach there. But I had seen the impact that and felt the impact that my college coach had on me. And I wanted to do that for someone else. So I felt like college is where I would fit. So I started looking at grad schools and GA positions. And I went all the way out to Kansas to an NAIA school, which it's significantly different from Division I schools. Maybe not anymore, but then it was. There's a lot less on the budget. There's a lot more on the coaches to do. So I jumped into doing that, and I started out with the hurdles. But the coach that was there was like, "You should do the multis. Like, if you're going to be a coach, you need to learn the events that you're going to coach that are kind of outside your wheelhouse, because that's where you're going to get the most understanding of the events that you're really good at." So my first 6 months of being a GA, the school was called Baker University, by the way. So my first 6 months at Baker, I was actually training with the multis, both men and women, and just learning how to pull ball, how to shot put, how to throw a jab and discus. And then once I got kind of through that, I started coaching, and I actually ended up competing in a couple multi events, competing in the hurdles, and ended up just missing qualifying for USA's my last year at Baker in the 110 hurdles. I think they took 32 and I was 33. So being at that point, I was 24. Being 24 and being able to still do that after having a pretty cool college career that was also up and down was like really humbling. So I left there. I went to Indiana State. I got my master's in coaching at Indiana State, and I was also their Spencer Hurdles coach for the 3 years that I was there. And that was again another adjustment, because I went from recruiting kids that weren't Division I athletes but pretty good to now you're with D1 athletes, and you got to deal with different personalities, and also you're trying to impart information on them that I was still pretty young when you're comparing me to the head coach and the assistants that have been there for a long time. So it's really hard to get people to kind of follow your lead. So I think I learned a lot of different coaching strategies, both through the program that I was a part of, the master's program, and through just coaching as a young athlete. So that gave me a lot of different ways to say the same thing to someone else. So instead of saying, get your knees up, think about pushing against the ground, get more high off the ground, things like that when you're teaching sprints. So Indiana State was a great place. And that also allowed me to go to NCAA Nationals as a coach for the first time. That was a really, really big step for me. It was one of my prouder moments because I got to see both of my college coaches there. So that was a really cool moment to go out to Eugene, see my hurdles coach, who's from Australia, and then see one of the head coaches that I really had a connection with. It was Monica Gary. I got to see them both out there. From there, actually, right after that, I got my first full-time position at the University of Dayton. And they were a women's only program. And I was in charge of all the power speed events except for throws. And that taught me a lot about organization. That taught me a lot about continuing ed with coaching, because you can't just repeat the same thing every year. You just can't. Like, people want to learn the events that are there in college, and they want to do their best. So trying to impart wisdom on them every year and spending my summers both recruiting and just learning on my own, I think made me, I think, the best coach that I could be. And I think that's why I'm still doing it, because there's that factor of there's always something to learn. And there's always someone that you're going to be able to uplift and teach them something that they didn't think was available to them throughout the sport. After I finished coaching collegiately, I decided that I wanted to be a physical therapist. That was something that was kind of in my brain in high school. But once I got to undergrad, I just really, really love track. And I think sometimes college athletes get a bad rap for going to college and not focusing on school, when if you think about it, that is kind of a academic focus in a way. Like you're spending 20 hours a week focusing on how to make your body better, how to understand the event better so that you can perform well. And then dealing with those ups and downs that come from competition, because you're not always the best. While you may have been recruited as the best and you may be the best on that specific team, you've got to put in a lot of work to be the best when it comes down to it, when those meets get bigger and the stage is completely different, going to nationals and all that stuff. So once I kind of got my head clear, I decided that I wanted to kind of impact the sport in a different way, kind of impact movement for people in a different way. So I started PT school just right before COVID, and I just finished a couple months ago. So I am to the point now where I'm ready to treat people full time. So I'm excited about that. But I'm also happy that I can combine physical therapy and my love for track and field together as one, because I always thought that if I did PT, I may have to give up something that I'm doing, and that's not true. So here I am today doing both of those things, and not thinking that I could, but here I am. I got
it. Yeah, you have quite the resume. I have like 2 or 3 questions for you.
it. Yeah.
So, what high school did you go to?
Thornwood High School. It's in the South Holland, so just outside of Chicago.
Yeah, yeah, okay. I was just like my uncle used to be the principal at Harvey Thornton, so I know the area, and my
Yeah,
cousin
yeah.
went to Thornwood, so I
Okay.
kind of know that. Okay, so that's the second thing I was gonna ask you is that from coaching in college, what would you say was the biggest thing that you were really looking for when it came to the kids you were recruiting?
Oh, that's a tough one. So I would say 2 things. If I got an email from a kid, or I went to a meet and I saw a kid compete and they did really well that day, how are they doing on average when they compete? Like PRs are great, but a PR is just your peak. Like you're at the most focused, you're at the least stressful in some ways. So that's great that you have a PR of, let's just say, long jump. You can jump 22 feet as a girl. That's awesome, right? But did you do that one time? Was that a meet that's in the middle of nowhere and the people that are measuring good care? I want to see what you do every single meet so that I know what I'm getting as an athlete in terms of performance. In terms of the person, I want to see that you have like a hunger to get better, and not just to put a good performance, but like understand the events that you're a part of, be a part of a team that could be successful if you just kind of engage in that. So I think those are the 2 biggest things.
And we have a very similar path. Like, sorry, coach, but I mean,
No, absolutely.
I didn't
No,
know
go
he was.
for
I
it.
didn't know we were
Like, I
getting all
knew you were
this.
going to jump on this. I knew you were going to be like, oh my goodness. Like, are
Well,
we
yeah, well,
cousins? Like, we.
yeah, because like I coached high school, and then from high school it was okay. What do you do next? Do you go coach college, or do you go to chiropractic school? So it was boom. I went to chiropractic school because I didn't want to give up the track component, and so
Hmm.
even with that, I was still coaching the whole time. You know, I was in St. Louis. I coached with the St. Louis Blues Track Club, and then I was
Ooh.
working with some people down in Tennessee when I was there, and then I ended up up here coaching. So that's we have a very similar path, which is
Yeah. And isn't it? It's cool because you get all of those experiences where you're like, that didn't work. That didn't work. And then you go to chiropractic school and you learn all the little tiny things about what's going on. And when you have to impart that information on someone, talking about like, I don't know, why you move your arms this way or why you twist this way, then
yeah,
you can use that information that you learn from track to deliver that information in a more simple way.
right.
So that I think that's an awesome like connection that you can have. And I'm sure you use it too, because you're a freaking smart guy. But being able to just dumb it down to a level that people are going to be able to digest that and make a difference is huge. And when you get those opportunities as a coach to go to different places, different ages, that makes you better at your practice.
Yeah.
I think it goes to a point you said, Keith, about you've been able to meet people where they are. Like these
Mhm.
experiences have helped you to, based on this athlete, this is how they respond better if I say it in this way. So how have you seen over the course of the programs you've been a part of or you've led in the evolution of track and field under your leadership?
I think by the end of my experience with the athletes that I've had, both Cathedral now and University of Dayton, Indiana State, I think a lot of the kids just come away with more confidence to do whatever they're doing, whether it's track, whether it's going into coaching, whether they're going into dental school or undergrad. I think they come away with just more confidence because they went through difficulty. They learned something new that they weren't sure that they could do. They learned how to deal with like different trials as a team. So like I think that's the biggest impact that I've had. And it's not always an X and O type of thing.
But and confidence, like you said, is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
But technically, what like technique wise, how do you like help them improve themselves throughout the season? Because track season can be pretty long. I
Mhm.
mean,
Gosh, yeah.
like what's the secret sauce in getting this kid who can't do much indoor to making it to regionals or state outdoor?
Yeah. So for the last few years, I've coached just the long jump at the Cathedral. My very first year, I helped with hurdles, pole vault, and then like long jump was like my main event. But what I've found to be the most successful is teaching them how to sprint. If you can simplify not just getting your knees up, but hitting the ground and trying to move forward and teach them good sprint mechanics, all the other things just fall together. I noticed that the most with pole vault, but then long jump kind of goes into that next. So I think just getting them good sprint mechanics and getting them confident doing it has been the biggest like change that I've seen over the last couple of years.
So like with track, it's an individual sport.
Yep.
So how have you cultivated like that team atmosphere and team camaraderie amongst the teams you've coached?
I try to include them in the process of training, the process of getting to know their teammates. I learned this at University of Dayton. One of the biggest things that the athletes were stressed out about was like, what's the workout Monday? What's the workout on Tuesday? So I started sharing like weekly workouts. I share a whole cycle with them so they understand where we're going. And then I started having video sessions that were individual and in small groups so that they were learning what was going on. At the high school level, that's really hard, right? You get them for an hour and a half every day and you spend 20 minutes warming up. So now you have maybe an hour and 10 minutes. And then there's the bus and all these other things. So what I learned from that is a couple of things, making sure the kids are communicating with each other. So giving high fives when they do something right, asking kids to come stand where I stand to watch the event and tell me what they see. So now they know what I'm looking for. So just kind of immersing them in the event and interacting with them in a way that they're learning has helped them kind of come together a little bit tighter. I'll tell this one story about team camaraderie. We were having the city championship my first or second year at Cathedral, and it was the girls' meet was first. The guys was, I think, a different day. And all the freshmen hadn't talked to each other because they had been talking to upperclassmen the entire year. So now they're all together. They're all super nervous and they're all freaking out. So they're all taking their jumps one at a time. And after they get done, they come over to me to assess what's going on. Well, I start having them just go high five each other if they didn't foul. And that just lifted all their spirits so much that by the time they're all done jumping, they were all talking in a group and not even noticing that I was there anymore. So they weren't coming to me for support. They were supporting each other.
Mhm.
Now, with doing stuff like that, how do you like prepare them? Like like you just said, they're nervous, this, that, and the other. How do you mentally prepare your kids for like the big meets, right? So the county meets, the sectionals, regionals, all those types of meets. How do you prepare them for that?
I do a couple things. I give a definite beginning and end to practice so it can feel like competition. I'll say like, okay, we're going to take 6 jumps, whether you foul or not. And we're going to work on these different things. And then after that, we're done. So there's that finite amount of time for them because that's what they're going to feel when they're in a meet. I also will, for some, especially when they get closer to like the state meet, if I have a kid going that far or sectionals, I'll take a cone and I'll put it out pretty far past what their PR is, or maybe I'll put it out where state qualifying is if they haven't hit it. And I won't say how far it is because they're always curious about why the cone's there. But then they start to figure it out and then they start to kind of dial it up a little bit. So I just give them that visual so that they have something that they're shooting for. And then we can focus on the things we're focused on, whether it's pushing out of the back or trying to be up tall in that mid phase of the jump. And then just seeing how far they can go if they execute those things correctly.
Nice.
How do you meet like your you have your newcomers and you have your seasoned athletes? So how do you balance, giving the experienced athletes the time they need, but as well as the newcomers who have potential? Because, like you said, coaching is like a lifelong thing and you can learn and grow as a coach. How do you balance the time?
Yeah, that one's really hard because I was talking to one of my athletes last year and I was like, man, it's really hard to just fit teaching long jump into as many practices as we get before the first meet. And then I thought about it and it was like, I have to teach you how to long jump in 3 hours. So that's maybe 2 practices. And that's a lot, right? So as I get older, I usually have all the athletes go through the same assessment at the very first practice. But then as they get older, I'll pull them off of those little assessment things if we don't need to check those boxes. And then I'll give them something to do that I can kind of see off to the side.
Mhm.
One of the things that I really learned how to do at University of Dayton was to juggle athletes at practice. I know, one of our college coaches would do that all the time. And I was like, how does he do that? It just
Yeah.
takes practice. So the kids that know what I'm talking about already, I'll have drills ready to progress them onto something else. So they're not learning a bit over and over again every year. They're learning a little bit more.
Mhm.
I also started sharing film with them at practice. That's a little hard to do because I like to watch the event and not film it. And so it's really
Mhm.
hard for me to assess it like right on the spot there. So I've learned to just kind of hold it down just below my eyes so I can see. But I'm able to share that video with them at the end of practice. And then I'll go back with the app I have and voice over it so they know what I'm looking for and they know what to kind of shoot for at the next practice.
You kind of sound like me.
Literally, literally, Coach Bear, right? You want to recruit him to our come over to this side, like I've
Yeah,
been
I'm
trying to
just
do.
like, man, because when I was coaching early on, I did a lot of that stuff too, like the recording, breaking it down. I mean, that's
Yes,
as a that's when you know as a coach that you just love the sport, you know.
right.
And
Mhm.
You
so
study it.
with that,
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask you what is it about the sport that you just love the most? Because we know no none of us are in this for the money. So what
Yeah.
is it about the sport that you just love?
I don't truly have the answer for that yet. I just like helping someone figure it out.
Mm.
In terms of like if I'm gonna go watch a track meet, why do I love watching a track meet? Because the events require so much effort and explosion and accuracy. And those are really hard to just line up perfectly every time. So I like being able to problem solve and try to put the pieces together so that kids can be the best. I like problem solving when I'm watching on TV. They did an excellent job of presenting the Olympics this year. So like you can see whatever angle you want of the event, you can see the speeds that they're traveling at and the vault or the disc when they're rotating around. So I just like that part of the event. When I was a kid, so I think my freshman or sophomore year of high school, my grandfather used to be a janitor and he would bring home like random appliances that still worked. And one of the times he brought home a VCR that had the wheel on it, so you could slow down videos and stuff.
Oh
So
yeah.
I had this video from my coach put together from my first year of track, and I just watched it over and over again. I slow it down, go backwards, just to see like why are these events so cool? And I just learned like I said before, lining up all those things perfectly to get the best mark that you can is like so difficult, so fulfilling, and like so fun to kind of do.
Keith, can you share, or Coach Keith, sorry, being your teammate from the past,
Yeah.
it's more normal. But can you share a success story maybe from this past season or even before that where, an athlete that you worked with just exceeded expectations just based on, I mean, you can truly tell like you are passionate about this work. So how, or share a story, a success story.
Yeah. So I'll tell a story at the University of Dayton. When I started there, there was an athlete that was a triple jumper, and she was previously a gymnast. And I was like, okay, I don't know anything about triple jump, but I got to coach triple jump, right? So I went through and I felt like I was doing the best I could. I had all the drills right, I had the workouts right. She wasn't super sore, she was strong, but the distance just wasn't changing. And I remember one day asking her, I was like, I'll use her short name. I was like, Meg, you're so good at like just body awareness. Have you ever tried doing pole vault? Which, mind you, that was my first real year coaching pole vault. But I was like, I think she needs to do that. So not only did I learn the event and teach it to her, but she ended up being really successful. She went from not scoring at the conference meet to scoring at the conference meet and clearing bars and being just happy to be at track practice. When I could tell that when she was a horizontal jumper, like that happiness was kind of just on the decline. And when we switched events, it made her a much happier athlete, and she was a much better teammate in that way, being successful.
Coach Keith, what makes uh what separates a great coach from a good coach, right? I mean, because she said that the example you gave just
Mm.
continues to show like how you study the sport and how you craft things to meet athletes and the evolution of it. So what would you say for coaches of today, coaching high schools, and maybe what other athletes are looking for? And I want to go be coached by this person because. So
Yeah.
what should they look for? What separates a good coach from a great?
And I truly think what separates a good coach from a great coach has nothing to do with what you know about sprinting or jumping. It has everything to do with how you connect with the athlete and how you guide them. Parents are trusting you with their kids, so that
Mhm,
you have to be, to some degree, a parent, even if you're not an actual parent. So
mhm,
being able to read them when they come in practice. Are they upset? Are they focused? And be able to kind of turn the knobs to get them to focus and be a little bit happier and be more engaged. If kids will always remember you when you kind of make that switch for them, when they aren't trying to be connected with you, but when you have
mhm.
that connection and you can kind of flip the switch to get them dialed in. I think truly that's what athletes are looking for. It's not always the colors that you wear or the scholarship money that you get. I think that's the most important thing.
Now, with I know you've been through the ranks with this, so the high school, the college. What did you do? Like, what measures did you put in place to keep your athletes healthy? How did you kind of set up or structure your workouts to keep them healthy? What was that like?
Yeah, so this is part of the PT story. So when I first started coaching collegiately, so I was at the NEIA school in Kansas, uh, they have significantly less support athletic training wise, having the team doctor. They do have it for like the money sports, but at those schools, for instance, you have 100 football players that have to be taped for practice by two trainers, and then you have track practice happening during that time. So I just started researching like injuries that I was hearing from practice and like, what do you do about that? And I stumbled upon a PT that I kind of followed along what he was doing and took from him and kind of applied to practice. So like doing foam rolling or rolling out the arches with a tennis ball, a cross ball, or having days where you're doing just a general strength type of like circuit. I didn't realize how important those things were until they were actively implemented and I could kind of track how athletes felt throughout the week. So sometimes I would, actually not sometimes, all the time. When I started there, I would, after practice was over, I'd input the numbers for whatever I was doing for the day, and then I would make my own notes, like you would make notes for a patient on how a practice went for different athletes, and I would be able to go back and see like, was that workout hard for them or wasn't it? And from there, I could adjust things to make sure that people weren't pulling hamstrings or having Achilles problems or having problems with their arches or having shin splints.
How are you mentally preparing your athletes for events? I know you talked a little bit about, at practice, kind of making it like a time thing, but also, there's that 90% mental thing that happens for
Mhm.
athletes. How do you help them navigate strenuous competitions and just being able to rise to the occasion and compete?
Yeah. So I think it helps that I don't know if your schedule is such that kids can kind of ease their way into the season, but it helps having like for Indiana, we had the meets at U Indy that are indoor, and then we have a couple of outdoor meets where it's everyone can compete as long as they're all signed into the meet. Those events are where I spend the most time, like talking to kids in between reps and events, and talk to them about what they've learned in practice, and just trying to get them to understand both that one, I care, and two, is it's fun and it should be a learning experience too. So I think the ramp up part of the season is the part where I get to know all the kids, because like I said, that 2 hours that you get, or those 2 weeks that we typically get to explain the event and try it, is it's different every year. It always shocks me, different from college, but I think the caring part is how you get the kids to focus in at those big meets. So knowing that you're going to be in this spot after they jump, so come over so we can talk, I think is a big thing. And once they kind of know how an event flows, no matter where you are, with the exception of the state meet, that's a tricky one. But for the most part, no matter where you are, they know how the event's going to flow. They're going to know where you are so they can look to you if they need you. And then otherwise, it's just, let's just focus on 2 or 3 things each meet that we're trying to work on. And then by the end of it, we should be excellent at the entire thing.
I like that. Now, I do, on the other side of that coin, especially in high school, academic wise, is there any specific routine you like recommend your kids kind of get into? How do you make sure they're solid on that front? Just so you don't end up in a situation where you're like, well, I was looking for you to jump and you can't come out here because I got this notice from your teacher. I mean, how do we keep them on track that way?
Yeah, that one's hard. That one's really hard because I was one of those people. School is actually really hard for me. If you can believe that, I've been in school forever, but it takes a little time. But I think the most important thing is getting out in front of it. If you can, and we can do this very easily at Cathedral, but knowing when they have tests coming up and knowing the meet schedule, those things kind of can help you navigate when it starts getting hard. So being out in front of when a test is coming up or when a big meet's coming up, to be able to, one, make sure that they know that's coming up, because sometimes they don't, and two, like it's okay, this is going to be a hard week, but this is how we're going to work through it. I think is the biggest thing.
So how do you involve, if at all, the parents of the athletes that you coach, and what does that look like?
I probably have more parent involvement over the last couple of years than I ever had. Sometimes it really depends on the athlete. Sometimes the parents are there and like right behind you before you even get to meet them. And sometimes they're up in the stands because they just want their kid to have fun. So it just depends. If it's the parents that are right behind me and they're like listening to me coach, I want them to hear what I'm saying. It's not a secret. I try to keep it as simple as I can so that they're not, because their kids, it's their kids. So their kids most likely are going to go talk to their parent after you talk to them. If I keep it very simple and it makes sense to me and it makes sense to them, then I won't have cross coaching happening when parents go away. But the ones that are up in the stands watching, I try to go engage them because I want them to know who I am. I'm not just the dude in the glasses telling a kid what to do every couple of jumps. I do want them to be involved because it helps, like I said, it helps that parent connection of you being a coach and a parent when the parent isn't there.
That's great. Especially, would you say how you've handled the cross coaching with the parent and the athlete coming over is that you keep it so simple? It doesn't, even if the parent is repeating or not repeating, the athlete knows like, okay, Coach Key told me this is where I need to focus and lock in. Or do you have those experiences where this can possibly help another coach? Like, hey, I dealt with a parent who the athlete never came over to me. They went to the parent. How have you seen that simplistic feedback work in your favor with the cross coaching?
I think I'm just lucky in the way that I keep it very simple. And if we've been working on 2 things in practice, I'm not going to tell you a third thing that you've never heard before, because then what is that? Think about how confusing that is for Coach Hopkins to say, okay, now we've been working on pushing out of the back and being up tall in your transition on your approach, to now we're at a meet. Now I want you to work on landing all of a sudden. And then they're going to go over to a parent and their parent's going to be like, you didn't jump very far. You should land better. Now they're like, I haven't worked on landing yet. So now they're confused. So if I can just keep them on the task that's for that meet for that week, it makes all the other cross coaching and all the other things they don't go away. They're always there, but it kind of helps manage them better.
Well, Coach, if you had anything that you wanted to share with parents or coaches in terms of, advice, small pieces of information that maybe help them out, what would you tell them?
I think just being supportive for your kid in whatever way works for them. I'm not going to say don't cross coach, because some parents just care and they want their kid to do the best, but however your kid can be best supported. If that means that you just stand along the fence and watch and be quiet and take videos and cheer for them, that's fine. If you need to be a little bit closer because they really are connected to you, that's fine too. But just know that it's hard for them too to be in front of all these people. And for me, for instance, they're going to go run and jump in the sand and they want it to look like an Olympian, but they're not there yet. So just being encouraging, being supportive, however you've learned to support them, and try not to steer them at that point. Let them just grow, let them learn and make mistakes.
If there were any college coaches watching this podcast, who are some of the athletes that you are working with that are just going to have some amazing achievements and accomplishments for the year that college coaches should be on the lookout for?
Oh, buddy. Oh, man. Actually, the biggest athletes that I had just graduated. So the group that I have this year is going to be completely brand new.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple of long jumpers that were sophomores last year that were pretty good, but they're all at the point where I'd say they know 90% of the event. So I wouldn't say I have anyone special yet, but give me some time. I always end up with someone. So I just need to see what happens with the year. And also sometimes I'm coaching something I don't know about, which is fun. So we'll see what happens. I'm actually working with the discus thrower right now.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And that's a new one for me. I haven't done that. I haven't thrown discus since like 2012. So it's fun learning rotation again. And now with my PT brain, it makes it just a little bit easier. But we'll see how she does.
Well, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
It's great having you on here, sharing that wisdom.
And a lot of that.
Well, I didn't know you had such an extensive background.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, we're very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we are.
cool.
I for a long time I didn't like sharing my background because I felt like it was so off the beaten path from everybody that I went to college with. Like some people went to college for 4 years, they graduated and they went right into a job. And I graduated in 5 years and I didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what I was good at and I was good at track and I knew that I cared about track. So I just went that route and it taught me so much about being organized, how to juggle 5 different things at once,
right.
and how to learn on my own and be able to apply that. And I think that's just helped me kind of super compensate, if you want to think about training in a way, all the things that I kind of went through. So I'm the most proud of that. And I'm most proud to kind of come out on the other side now and have all these things to talk about.
Right. And you have so many things to pull from.
Right.
That it's
all those experiences and that one athlete, I didn't like school. And here you are, Doctor/Coach Hopkins, like Doctor/Coach Weir. That's it's a big deal.
Yeah, that's a huge deal, man. I think the biggest thing is that I'm the first person in my family to have a master's degree. I have 2, so there's no one doing that. But I also am the first one in my family to be a doctor. So that's a big, big deal. And I'm really proud about that.
It's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good deal then.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Coach. We appreciate you and we look forward to seeing you at the meets this upcoming season and wishing you and your athletes the best of luck.
Absolutely. I look forward to you guys keep my spirits up when I see you because it's always a pleasure.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. You guys have a good night.
You too.